Councillor Brewer, I think you make two really, really good points. Number one, this is about focusing on the strategic areas as the focus for Panuku, but we do need to do exactly what you're pointing out, is the finessing of the role of Panuku. And again, I think we've got a really important conversation to have as a governing body around the policy direction and settings for that. Member Taipiri.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Thank you for the information. Thank you for identifying the board's participation. Thank you for the clear Māori impact statement. However, what is missing is how you have engaged with Mātai Waka. Would you please advise?
At this stage, I mean, certainly this project and the aspects I've been involved in have been more mana whenua. There are significant Mātai Waka interests in the region, and I believe that the next stage that Panuku are designing will be including that in terms of what other development interests there could be. I suppose at this stage the focus on mana whenua is because we've been looking at land, the physical opportunities within Auckland, but it's certainly very clear, and through the purpose statement of Panuku Development Auckland, that we want to look for opportunities to partner with iwi, and that doesn't matter if it's within the region or outside of the region. And really, I suppose commercial interests have to start coming through in that regard. When we are looking at these locations in terms of their demographics, though, I suppose that is more around ethnicity, not being iwi specific. So there are large areas, particularly in South Auckland, where there are significant Mātai Waka populations. So there's sort of the two aspects in terms of the communities we're affecting, but also the potential entities that might want to partner with development. And from what I understand, colleagues are, at the moment putting together opportunities to consult, and that there will be a number of hui over the next couple of months.
Thank you. So what you're saying is you haven't yet, you will, and there are certain trigger points that will create that? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, certainly in terms of the process I've been involved with, I haven't been, but the Panuku are sort of taking this forward now, have indicated that they will be.
Thank you.
Councillor Casey.
Let me try and phrase this properly. I'm a wee bit worried about the emphasis on location, especially for the next phase of Panuku development. And I'll raise with you the issue of housing for older people, and say the issue of Liston Village. And for my colleagues who don't know the issue, the previous Auckland City Council entered into a sale and purchase agreement with the Catholic Church to take over, as people died, the 25 units at Liston Village. Now, the local board has a view that, based on the current shortage of housing for older people, that we retain the village. So my concern is this, that location doesn't enter into your or our list of priority areas. But the issue of housing for older people is a priority for this council. So I'm looking at your projects that might cut across the whole region and not be located anywhere. And that is that the type of work that you will be engaging in, or are you going to be purely location based? And just to follow, before I go down to answer, but you're reporting to us in December, but my committee's also asked you for a report in December on Liston Village. Do you need more time to look at the second and third phases?
If I can clarify, I mean, I work for Auckland Council, but I understand that the Panuku team, there is a team that has a focus on housing for older people. It is a project of theirs. So I could certainly report that back to them, but in terms of the work I've been doing for Council to advise Panuku, it hasn't been covering that sort of detail. But that is a separate work program, and I do believe I know the person who would be responsible for that, so I could certainly pass on those comments. But since the work I've seen, they actually have it as a separate project line, housing for older people, as opposed to the Type 1, Type 2, Type 3 projects.
Right, so that doesn't really come across in this report, that there's other types of work, but probably because we're focused on the Type 1.
That's right, yeah, that's right.
Maybe we need a
Councillor Casey, I
something?
think we may be able to help. We've just had a quick little chat here. Looking at our next item on the whole issue of housing, we're trying to work out, with Jim and Dean's help, a bit of a wiring diagram that I'd like to talk about in the next item, which has the really big issue of housing, in it all the different subsets and how they fit together, of which one is older adult housing with a crossover bit into redevelopment. So I think if we can pick up some of that in the next item, your point's really, really important, and I think we can't lose it. Councillor Clark.
I'm just a little bit just concerned about part of the methodology. I mean, Panuku Development Auckland is one of our CCOs, and it obviously works for us, so to speak. Thank you. There may be some of these, the final list, that there's clearly going to be some that are going to be rejected as not a priority. Yet we may have LTP investment decisions and money that's going to go out to be spent on various things, and and it may happen, and Panuku's not involved with it. Could you just explain the importance in the methodology about our own LTP investment decisions and an influence on the choosing of them? Because it would be unfortunate if some of them got out of sync and we end up doing some, you just say, half-assed type developments in certain areas because we're not involving Panuku.
Yeah, look, certainly through the chair, council investment was a key consideration right from the beginning in terms of trying to shortlist locations. And once we got to the detailed criteria assessment, we had another number of criteria in terms of what was our committed investment in the location, what was planned, and what had been delivered. So we had a good understanding of the nature of investment in the areas, but also if the location fell within a spatial priority area as well, because certainly that's a key outcome of the latest LTP, where we are focusing not just money but resource. So that would really help the score of a location. Now, some of these areas don't fit within spatial priorities at this stage, but they may have had significant funding thus far, or could be on the cusp of being a spatial priority, maybe in the next sort of 5-year plan. But certainly that will be a key factor in terms of determining whether it's a shortlisted top 2 or 3 location. And places like Manukau, where there is quite a lot of emphasis at the moment, they sort of do stand out very clearly. And I think that's hard to ignore. But in that same token, there are other locations where there is significant government funding going in as well. So I suppose it's where there is a key convergence. But I would hazard to say that where there is a spatial priority area, that really does help highlight a priority for where Panuku should be focusing.
You say it was a key consideration, but I'm just looking in the report here, clause 23, and it just says other considerations included, as though it's kind of a little bit of an afterthought.
Yeah, well, that was for the initial shortlisting.
Just hang on, just hang on. I might just get Dean to comment on that.
Just want to clarify.
Yeah, just to clarify.
So there's, as we look at the role of Panuku Development Auckland, and we look at LTP funding generally across Auckland, there's 2 sets, as one way of looking at it, 2 sets of priority. You've got those areas that Panuku will focus on, and there's a number of criteria, and you've heard about those. But we know full well that there is investment in other parts of Auckland, some of which are on that list, most of which sit inside spatial priority areas, that Panuku won't be directly involved in, but still remain a priority. So the question for us as an organisation then is, how do we handle that? How do we make sure that those investments take place in a fashion that delivers strong development outcomes and quality projects in their own right? So that's being thought about constantly, and one of the delivery mechanisms that we've created to support that is, and you've heard me talk about it a couple of times, is the program office, the development program office. It's there deliberately to help draw together those aspects of those parts of council that we need to make sure support an integrated quality outcome for wherever we're investing. So I see Panuku Development Auckland, and I see the Development Programme Office working hand in glove, and they need to work with our spatial priority areas and consistent with the outcomes we're looking to achieve. But we've got two key platforms for achieving those outcomes.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thanks, councillor Clow. Councillor Watson.
Thank you. Just seeking a little bit of an explanation or elucidation maybe as it goes to Albany in terms of the location assessment results there. In terms of scale, it's obviously it's as big as anywhere. Actually, the only other place that comes close to it is Aotea and K Road. So I'm just wondering what the effect and what your reading is of the potential there, given that Albany is the fastest, biggest growing area in the northern part of Auckland. The old catch cry of Albany, the centre of the shore, is rapidly coming to fruition. I'm just really wondering to what extent some of these other factors that perhaps aren't quite so important in the scheme of things have tended to skew things there a little bit. I mean, I know, for instance, the land and influence, that's obviously very important, but council does have big land holdings or investments in infrastructure there that I suspect might not be captured in that particular criteria. So just really seeking a little bit of an explanation as to where you see a place like where somewhere as big as Albany and with the growth potential is sitting in this program.
Yeah, well, Albany certainly is a huge opportunity for growth and development within the region. And it has taken some time, I suppose, to get moving. And that was a key question in terms of, is that something that Panuku could sort of help with? I suppose when it came down to looking at the influence we had in the area, our large land holdings were sort of, of a nature of sort of amenity value in terms of the large stadium, the stormwater ponds, that sort of thing, and that the key development sites were really in private ownership. So right there was, I suppose, a bit of a blockage in terms of what Panuku could affect. But I think what's interesting is that area has now started to slowly pick up. There is now some construction proposed. Some of the long-awaited apartment buildings are to be built. That, I suppose, the rationale for our influence, public sector influence, was fairly limited compared to the other areas. So at this stage, it wasn't ranking as highly as some of these other areas, but that's not to say it's not important in itself. I suppose to be as one of the potential development locations highlights that's importance. But there are a number of other criteria, as you rightly say, and when we are trying to seek sort of more win-win situations in terms of opportunities to support communities, support other investment that might have happened more recently, it didn't rank as highly, and it was really as simple as that. But I suppose where we feel about Albany is we're not feeling uncomfortable about that location. It is starting to happen now.
So just a quick follow-up to that, and I accept all those points. Just in terms of the capacity to facilitate then in areas like Albany, and I know you're obviously going to be stretched resources in the areas you concentrate in, what ability to help these areas that are largely going to be market driven then does Panuku have?
Well, I'd say it actually wouldn't be so much for Panuku where there is a private sector interest, maybe echoing Mr. Kimpton's comments around the new DPO, and that would be through coordinating infrastructure provision, making sure that there aren't barriers in front of the private sector to deliver new development, whether it's housing or commercial. So I think there's a role that we can have in terms of making sure we're getting our master planning right and our investment and our infrastructure provision correct.
Thank you. Councillor Cashman.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And bearing in mind what you've said and what Mr. Kimpton has said, the stage one are big projects, almost generational projects. And what Councillor Brewer was alluding to, and I have a lot of sympathy with it, is that when we were out consulting about Development Auckland, it was about delivering things to a community, in a time frame that people could understand and it was accessible to them. So with the stage 2 work that we're going to be doing, or the type 2 and 3 work, will there be some projects in that list, and I'm sure there will be, that are actually going to be quick wins where you can actually turn a rundown area around using private money, council abilities and consenting processes to actually achieve some results on the board in the very near future?
Through the Chair, I believe there is. I'm not the correct person to answer that, and I don't want to sort of pull the cat out of the bag before Panuku can present that to you next month. But certainly, from what I understand, even through this work, we've highlighted some locations that did have comprehensive redevelopment opportunity. But even if they didn't come through to the shortlist, there certainly were key type 2 opportunities there are available. So certainly I think that there are, and it will really be, I suppose, dependent on market conditions and what we can do to help de-risk and facilitate some of these developments coming forward. But certainly in a number of locations, you know, council owns car parks that could be great development opportunities should we have the right partners to help deliver that. And I know they're being considered, and I believe in your workshop in November that will be revealed to you.
Identified.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Madam Chair.
It's
Avondale's
increasingly,
a good example, Councillor
Yeah,
Cashman.
I quite agree. Councillor Clark.
it's increasingly clear that we need, with the workshop that comes back, is we need to expand out Panuku Council, you know, the revitalisation projects that will carry on, I think, just to, so that people are clear. And Avondale is a very good example. Councillor Penrose.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair.